Hello, everybody. How are we all doing? Looking forward to this session. I don't think I've done a podcast one yet. So you're so welcome. I'm going to be looking at Adobe Podcast, accessible via Express, and talking a little bit about student voice. If you haven't dabbled with it, you're in for a treat. I'm going to go completely from scratch, how to get started and what are all the best tips and tricks and ways that you could apply it with your kiddos and make use of some of the great features that are available for you in that. I always recommend having two screens, one to be able to watch me and watch the demo, and then another one so that you can push all the buttons and play along with me. This session will be recorded, so if you do have to nip off, somebody's chasing you out or you have to go and pick up the kids or something like that, just come back at any time. You can find it up on YouTube, or you can go over to the same link that you're accessing this on. So you can also pause me. So if you need to pause because you're still having fun getting creative and pushing all the buttons, then do take that time that you need to do so. And then just play when you're ready to take part again. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you have a chat function. I know some of your accounts block the chat, and that's okay if it has. But if you do have questions, I have my phone beside me here. So if you're sending an email with a question, I'll keep a little eye on it here as well and get back to you either on email or during the call today. So work away with the chat and then work away as well online on the email that you used to click onto this link. So podcast, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to create our own one. So let me hop over to demonstrate. Let me add this on. There we are. I disappeared for a second. I'm using Adobe Express for Education now. If you don't have this version, you go see in the top right left corner here, Adobe Express for Education. You still can use Adobe Podcast, but this is just my entry point because on the homepage of Express, when you scroll down, you'll see this little tile. Now your landing page might look a little different. You might have maybe it's quite zoomed in. Maybe you're on a different device and it's a different aspect ratio, or maybe it's like quite zoomed out. So you're just looking for this tile, create a podcast. Now, what I would say at this point is currently this does not work on iPads, which is such a pity because I know iPads are obviously going to be the way that you probably have a built-in mic for your devices, but hopefully you have laptops or Chromebooks or Surface Pros or something like that, because that will get you really far with creating with podcasts, or if you're using desktop machines that you have a built-in mic or a little Bluetooth mic or a plug-in mic that you can use with it. So let's get started straight away. Click in here and you'll notice it took me to a different browser. So up at the top, it has, you can see it's taken me to podcast.adobe.com. So I'm in a totally different web page, but it has logged me in already. So I'm still on my education account and I haven't had to type in other usernames and passwords, which is great. From this page, I can see how straightforward it is just to start recording. Like it's literally the first button that we see. Let me zoom in a little bit for you there. Right here, the first button, start recording. And then you just go. Now, ideally, you're bringing your students to this tool when they have their script ready. You're bringing them along and they've already, maybe mapped out who's the host and is there an interviewer. Maybe there's going to be co-hosts that are going to be talking to each other throughout the session. You'll be coming to this point once they have done out their scripts, unless it's just a conversational podcast and it's totally unscripted, in which case, let's just go push buttons. But I would recommend that you have students come prepared before they come into this part of the tool. So to start recording, you literally click Start Recording, and it's going to bring open the Adobe Podcast feature. Now, what it's also going to do, you can see here, is it's already showing me that the mic has picked up my voice. It's ticking along here, and if I go quiet, you can see there's no sound waves there. At the bottom, there is an option to turn on the camera. So I could make a video podcast here or a vodcast, but I don't have to. You can just keep it switched off. So if it switches on and you're like, I see my face, just go down to the bottom to switch that off. The microphone, you can mute it there. And then in the settings here, it basically just allows you to choose which microphone or camera you're having access to. I'm happy with my default settings, and I could just go and start recording right away. To show you just how quick it is just to get started, I am going to record something, but then I'm going to restart and do the podcast in a way that I would structure it with my students or with my digital leaders, because I've done a school podcast before back in the days of COVID, and I had a whole system set up for it. It was like a little workflow, and I'll take you through how I did that. So let's just get in with showing you some of the basic functionality of Adobe Podcast, and then we'll go back and do a lesson process or how you would structure a podcast. So let's start off just hitting record, get a little intro. Hi everyone, welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. I'm your host, Nicole O'Connor, and I'm delighted to be joined live on an ACE training webinar. What's ACE, you say? It stands for Adobe Creative Educator. And I'll stop there. Now, I made a little mistake. I had like quite a long pause at the start, the millennial pause, sometimes it's called. But that was intentional because I'm going to show you what you can do now when you want to edit that track. Because right now I'm looking going, well, I just recorded something. Where did it go? Up at the top, we're currently in the record menu. And if we go over to the edit tab, that's where we're going to see that it's currently processing our recording, our piece of the podcast that we've done already. It's identified the speaker in this case, and it's transcribed it for me. So if I zoom in here, I can see, hi everyone, welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. I'm your host, Nicole O'Connor. I'm delighted to be joined live on an iOS training webinar. That's not right. What's iOS? Okay, so let's correct some of this. I'm going to click here on iOS training and correct the transcript. You might be like, well, why do you care, Nicole? As long as it sounds fine, just you wait. I'm going to tick that. What's iOS? Correct the transcript and fix that. Then click the tick. And I'm going to make another change, but I just want you to hear the podcast so far. So I'm just going to click up at the start where I want it to start playing. And I'm going to click play down at the bottom and have a little listen. Get a little. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. Okay, so there was quite a long part at the start where I'm like not actually speaking for the podcast. And that's represented with this full stop here. And if I want to get rid of that to edit this podcast, all I have to do is use my keyboard and delete it out. So I'm just editing the transcript. And let's have a little play. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. I'm your host, Nicole O'Connor. And maybe I'm like, do you know what? I don't need people to know my surname. I just need them to know my first name. So I'm just going to delete out O'Connor. I'm just going to click on that. And let me just bring the playhead back to the start here and just scrub it back to the start and then hit play. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. I'm your host, Nicole, and I'm delighted to be joined live on an ACE training webinar. Okay, so that's how easy it is. Just go in and literally edit the transcript and change and delete things. Now, you can't add in a word. Like I was editing the ACE, like where it said iOS and changing it to ACE. I can't just go and type in words here and it would make up my voice. All I can do is edit and correct the transcript. Now at this stage, what I could do is start going, well, normally podcasts have like a little musical interlude. So let's have a look down the left-hand side. I've got music here. And if you've got some like little sound packs, so if I go into like this one, machine, have a little play and hear it. Maybe I'm like, no, I don't like this vibe. I'm going to come back out of this. I quite like Heatwave. Have a little play. Yep, happy with that one. All I have to do is click add and it pops it in here. Now, I didn't pay attention to where I should have been clicking to put this in. So good news, I can just drag it to where I want it to be. I want it to be right at the very start. So let me just drag that up here before anything else. Now, you'll notice the eagle eye amongst you that bumped up the length of my podcast down at the bottom. So now it's 13 seconds long or 22 seconds long. So let's have a little play and hear the start now with this musical interlude. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this. And we started in. Now, for me, Personally, there's still quite a gap at the end there. I would maybe like my voice to be coming in sooner. So what I can do is I can go to the little toggle in the top right here, and I can fade out the music. I could fade it in, and I could also set it as the background. I quite like the set as background option because it means then my voice is going at the same time as the music. You can see when I brought the playhead back to the very start, my podcast is now only 14 seconds compared to the 22. And I can see just here the digital literacy cues here that something is about to start at the very start of the sound file and at the very start of the transcript. So I have a play now and hear the difference. Hi everyone, welcome to this bite-sized episode called The Digital Pulse. All right, and I'm pretty good. So those are the type of little features that you can do quite quickly without needing to do a whole lot of splitting your clips and changing things out and adding in guest speakers and things like that. You could literally just put in sound file, your voice, go and put in another sound file, do the next bit of recording here, just start clicking record and away you go. And then you would start looking at exporting your clip. You would rename your podcast, you would export it, and we'll get to that bit later on. But I'm going to take it back a step now and show you how, if I'm getting students to do this for a real purpose, a real audience, and not just like their first exploration phase, because this is great for exploration, just get them to push buttons and work out how they might structure a podcast. I'm going to go back to the homepage of Adobe Podcast, and you'll see this is slightly different to where you open up from the homepage of Express. The homepage of Express brings you to this homepage, which just says start recording. But the homepage of Adobe Podcast looks a little bit different. I can see all of my previous podcasts. I love a podcast. And then I can see where I can start a new project. If you don't have previous podcasts, you'll probably see some sample and demo podcasts in there. So I can go here from start a new project and it'll bring me the same experience as earlier. But you'll notice here, it's opened me up in the edit tab and not in the record tab. But if I like the record tab, I'll just go there. Like, just as easy to click over there, let it load up your microphone and your video camera if needs be to start recording. I quite like when it brings you to the edit tab because I like to structure out my podcast and know what I'm going into. And that's where the placeholders become very helpful, especially if you maybe have a podcast guest that you want to join you, but they're not there live at that exact moment that you're prepping the podcast, and then placeholders are super helpful. So for example, I might pop in my first placeholder and say this is for intro music. And then I'll put in another placeholder and I say this is going to be my, host one intro. Next one, so on and so forth. And then maybe the first part of this podcast is going to be about the podcast topic. Next placeholder. Maybe I'm now going to do start into the first section. So I might do I put in a little sound effect because sometimes there's a little musical transition. And this is where it's really important that we don't take for granted that students listen to podcasts. Some secondary school students and further and higher education students do. So that's great. But I would make sure if you're working with younger learners or even Key Stage 3, that you find a suitable podcast to listen to in class. And just like you would with familiarization of a writing genre, get them to write down what were the features of this podcast. It had music, great. It had a sound effect. It had an advert, so on and so forth. And then get them to just listen and note down and notice and pay attention to what they hear. And then that's how they can start planning their own ones. So then topic 1, the recruitment test. Now this isn't necessarily where I'm putting down my full lengthy transcript or my script that I'm bringing. It's more just, as I said, placeholders so that I will come back and pop something into this place later, and I'll just storyboard and scaffold out what I'm going to do. Really helpful if you've got a group of students working together and you need to divvy out the roles. You could say host 1, host 2, host 3, or put their names in there. I mean, for this demo, it's just going to be me, so I'll just take that bit away. And I can keep going, keep scaffolding it out, and then go, right, now it's time to either add in my recording. So perhaps I have a recording that I did on like voice notes or voice memos or GarageBand or another tool when I was out and about. I could upload that. You can see you can also import multi-track sessions. I have not done that one myself, but that's very helpful if you've got guest recordings that you've done another time on a different tool. But I'm probably happy to go, right, let's add in my music now. And I'll go against Heatwave. I do love Heatwave, to be honest, but I'll go and find a different one. Backlight looks kind of cool. So let's have a little play of it here. Oh, that sounds quite scary. Fuzz. Cool disco vibes. Let's see this one, Shimmer. And I am doing exactly what every student ever will do. They will go through every single sound file and try and go, yeah, I like that vibe. No, I don't like that vibe. And that's exploration, and definitely carve out time for that. That's a really good opportunity to start talking to them about, well, actually, like, have we got a specific audience? Have we got a particular focus group that this is being targeted at? So if this is being aimed at GCSE students for like study tips, then what type of sounds would they enjoy compared to we're making an intergenerational podcast that might go out to grandparents as well. We need to think about their music tastes and their sounds and the things that they would like as well. So getting a deep awareness of like almost market research about what your audience likes is really helpful and really important in podcasts. So let me add in my intro then that I've got. And I'm just going to drag it up here. And you see it's taken over that spot there. Now I need my host recording intro. So I've just clicked on this part here. I've clicked on this tile, this little cell. And now I'm going to go down to my microphone and record my introduction. So let me try it again. Record at current position. Start recording. Hi everyone, welcome to a bite-sized episode of the Digital Pulse. I'm Nicole O'Connor, your digital leader for today's session. And stop. And my recommendation to students, even if they have a script, is don't try and record all of it in one big chunk, because you'll find that you need to take a breath, maybe you'll stumble over your words, and whilst you can go and edit the transcript, there's no big pressure to try and record it perfectly all in one go. And in fact, mistakes are actually welcome because you sound more human. So you can always hop over to the edit tab then, have a little look if there's anything you want to change here. And this is where it very much depends on your personal working style, but also your students. Some of them might like to edit as they go and like come up here and be like, oh, I've got a full stop, which tells me that there's a long lengthy pause at the start. So let me delete that. I'll go and tweak the transcript here and there. Or they might just want to go and do all of their recording and then go and do all of their editing. So you can either do record, edit, record, edit, record, edit, or all of your recording and all of your editing. That's 6 to 1, half a dozen the other, as we say. Now, I don't need this placeholder anymore because that is my intro piece. So I can delete it out, or I'm happy enough because this might be a helpful scaffold or template that I'll use for a future podcast. So maybe I'm happy just to leave it there. And I'll maybe go into the next part. Let me delete out that little full stop for my lengthy pause at the back. And my next part is going to be talking about the podcast topic. So I'm going to introduce what we're talking about today. So I'm going to say record at current position. Brings me automatically back over to the record tab, and then I'll just click start recording when I'm ready. We all know the basics of online safety. We've been hearing them since primary school. But as we start looking at universities, jobs, moving out, getting our own place, the stakes are getting quite a lot higher. So today I'm going to give you 3 quick wins to keep your digital life secure. Stop. Now that's done, I could hop back over and do some changes, but maybe I'm just going to keep recording now and let that bit process in the background. And I'll go on to the next part, which is going to be my introduction to the first point. So let's start recording again. First up, your digital footprint. We're at the age where recruiters and admission officers are starting to Google us. It's not just about deleting all of that cringe stuff on our social media. It's about curation. So take 5 minutes today just to have a quick look at your social media's privacy settings on everything. If your profile's public, make sure that it's representing the person you would want a future employer to hire. Stop. And I could keep going. But at this stage now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop back over to the edit menu, because you get the point. I would just keep stacking up my little sound files over time. And then over here, I can see that I put in a little section for a sound effect. So I'm going to go find a sound effect from the same category here, which was shimmer, so that my podcast has kind of like a brand running throughout it. So if I go over to click here on the sound effect and then go to music, I'm going to scroll down to shimmer. Here it is. And it's got little transitions. So I've got my intros and outros. Transitions just help me go from one section of my podcast to the other. I'm happy to keep it short. Pop it right in there. And then the digital footprint bit comes in here, which is good. So let's have a little listen then for this first section of the podcast. And this is where I encourage you as teachers, if you're modeling this, to really resist the urge to be self-deprecating about your voice. There's such a temptation for us to go, oh, I don't like hearing my own voice back. And we pass that insecurity on to students of any age, and they start going, oh, is there a reason I shouldn't like hearing my own voice? So when you're modeling this, try and have confidence with just going, let's listen to a minute of Miss O'Connor talking and things like that, just so that you're not putting an expectation that they should also carry an insecurity about it. That's just my advice. I feel that it works really well with students if they all just accept, like, yeah, this is it. We just, we listen to each other's work and it's fine. It's our voice, might sound different, but we'll not make a big deal about it. So let's have a little listen here to the start of this little micro podcast that I'm doing. Hi everyone, welcome to a bite-sized episode of the Digital Pulse. I'm Nicole O'Connor, your digital leader for today. We all know the basics of online safety. We've been hearing them since primary school. But as we start looking at universities, jobs, moving out, getting our own place, the stakes are getting quite a lot higher. So today I'm going to give you 3 quick wins to keep your digital life secure. First up, your digital footprint. We're at the age where recruiters and admission officers, and I'm going to pause there. So I can see I need to take out that big long gap, and I have to do a couple of little edits as I go, but being able to listen back to your work and make those changes, super helpful. Another thing that I really like is it starts to, whenever you get students peer reviewing each other's podcasts in the edit stage, not when the student has completely finished and they're so proud of their finished product. But if you get that like feedback early and often, whether it's from the adults or from the students, then they start to go, oh, there was quite a gap there, or I got distracted, I wasn't paying attention, or I need something to hook me in. So maybe there's a little transition music or jingle that needs to be popped in somewhere. So I find it's very helpful if you get a feedback loop going with students, either peer or with adults in your class when you're doing this. So having a little buddy is always helpful. So if you are in the chat and you want to suggest feedback for me right now, that's how we would model this. You just go, oh, maybe consider this, or, give me some tips and I can apply it. Now, I'm quite lucky that right now I'm in quite a quiet office space. So my sound and my microphone is coming across quite well, but I'm not in a classroom. And when you're in a classroom, you might have an experience where you've got lots of students working on their projects at the same time. There's a lot of background noise. So hearing this clean, crisp audio transcription isn't going to be a reality for you. But it can be because of Adobe Podcast's feature called Enhance. So over here on the left-hand side, I just click this little button and it says only transcribed content is enhanced. So all of this writing will be enhanced. And if I click this on, essentially I get a lot of customization for how much I wanted to enhance my voice. Do I want background noise? Like, let's say you're doing one of your school podcasts or your college or university podcast live from the assembly hall or live from the students' union or something like that. You might actually want a bit of background noise in. So you might dial it up a little bit so you can hear round of applauses and things like that. Or maybe you want absolutely none. Try and dampen that down as much as possible. But maybe you want a little bit of atmosphere. So you'll dial it up and then listen to the speech enhancement. Did it alter your voice too much? Is there too much polish on it? Just experiment with how much you need to move that slider. So if I go and click for here and have a little listen to my voice now. First up, your digital footprint. We're at the age where recruiters and that sounds really good, to be honest. So I'm happy with that. Like the 90% makes my voice sound excellent. So even if you're working with older laptops and the microphone's a little fuzzy and things like that, this Enhance tool is going to be your best friend. So definitely try it out. Now, next thing that I want to do is I want to get to the stage now of maybe like I want to have collaborators on my podcast. I want to have like a star guest. So that is quite simple and straightforward to do in the record panel. You go over here and you have a tab up in the top right corner that says invite guests. Invite guests, you can either do it with a link that you might pop onto your learning environment or send in a message to somebody, or you can email it to them. So you could get like a sample email, type in someone's email address. So if I put it like dig8686561@adobe.com, send it across to myself. That little invitation has been sent to me. But if you're working with students who don't have access to email addresses, then just getting a link and having a platform where they can share links to each other is very helpful for this. So that's what I would be looking for. And I can see now I have got that link through on my account. So let me go and open it up on a different tab here. So I've just got an email has popped in. So I'm just going to open it up and show you what the experience is then to join a podcast when you're the guest. Give me a second. Not timed myself out of my emails. Okay. So let me come across here. Let me bring this across. So this is what it looks like. An email here saying I have invited myself to a recording session, and then it puts in my domain. So I was using my C2K account, and then it was that's known as the Western Education Library Board. Join the voice-only session with the button below. Please use Google Chrome on a desktop, and you'll have the option to check your mic beforehand. So all I have to do is click this. It's going to open up into podcast.adobe.com. Going to ask me which account I want to use first. And then it will load me in to this podcast. Of course, give it permission to access your microphone. I don't want my camera on for this. And I'm going to join the session. Just like that. Nicole, come on. It's a lot of reverb. Let me come back over there. So that is how it will look whenever you get two students coming in. But also you could then get a guest host in. So maybe there's like a local football club. Maybe you're doing a community podcast and you want to go and reach out to like neighboring businesses. There's your ad segment. Maybe you want to go and get a local author or somebody like the local dentist. Maybe your students are learning about the human body or something like that, or the teeth for 1 week, and you get a dentist on for the podcast that week. It's that simple. They also can join super easily without having, you can see here on this guest account, it doesn't have me logged in here. Like I can join that as without an Adobe account as well, which is super easy. Another opportunity would be getting students from like shared education campuses. Maybe you are doing like a multi-campus project. Maybe you're working across districts or across schools, and getting students from College 1 and College 2 to co-host a podcast together would be a great idea for someone to go and cherry pick. And essentially the guest host on this just records. They don't get an option to edit. You can see there's no tabs up at the top here like I do on my, because I'm the host over here. So I don't have an option, the guest doesn't have an option to go and export the podcast ahead of time or anything like that. They only get the pleasure of your company and to record either with their camera on or just with their mic on, and that's it. So really good to know those restrictions and the limitations, but also the boundaries and the security of it as well. So all I would have to do is just, turn one of these microphones on and start taking part in the podcast, recording, and then that will come up. It's a pity, oh, well, this one doesn't have an apostrophe. I was going to say, it's a pity my name is identical on both accounts because you'll not see the difference. But this one doesn't have an apostrophe. So I'll do a little record for a section in this, like just to put something else in. So let me. There's going to be too much reverb, so I'm not going to do it because I've got the microphone here and two microphones there, so I'm not going to be able to do it. But you would get the point that even when you hop over to the edit section, it would have a different Nicole O'Connor, or would have your co-hosts or your guests' name in there, and you can edit out something. So if a guest says to you like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, can you take that out? You go, no problem. I can edit the transcript and the audio file straight afterwards. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to leave the podcast, and come back over here to finish up. So really straightforward ways to collaborate, and you can have multiple guests on. It doesn't just have to be one other guest. You could have multiple. You could have like put in a group of 4 students, or I don't know what the limit is actually off the top of my head now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm always keen to learn. So if you do stress test it with like your entire, student council group, and you're just like, oh, Nicole, it doesn't take 12 guests, then let me know, because I'm always keen to learn that one. Or I'll go search it up afterwards. But let's say we're getting to the point now where, we've finished our podcast. We've put in, if I go down to Shimmer and put in my outro, let's put in, outro, put in a short outro at the very end. There we go. I haven't done all 3 tips that I promised my podcast guests. I'm now going to rename my file because that is absolutely what we should always do instead of having untitled 6 million. And I'll just call this digital footprints, or call it like the digital pulse. And you could always say like season 1, episode 1. You could like start doing shorthand for your podcast series if it's going to be a nice lengthy one that you're planning to do, like it's going to keep running for a while. Then S1, E1, season 1, episode 1, or series 1, episode 1, and then just have a quick naming convention so that you can search it easily. All right, let's get to the exporting part then and see what we can do with this. So over in export, in this tab, I have a couple of options. The first one is just to download the audio of this podcast. So it would just download it as an MP3, like so. So just downloads to your computer so you can go and share it out however you see fit. But most often now, when podcasts are going out, if you're putting them on a podcast platform, it's fine just to upload like an MP3 only. However, it's most likely that schools are going to be, and colleges are going to be putting this on social media as well. So in that case, using this audiogram and animated transcription video is actually really cool. So if I click into here, you can see this is why it was important for me to edit the transcript. Remember when it said iOS and I went in and changed it to say ACE and things like that? This is where it's helpful, because if you have an accent, which we all do, it might get things slightly different. Or if you're saying a homophone or something that's quite similar, it might just transcribe it slightly incorrectly. But this is why you want to go in and check the spelling and correct the transcript. So going here, I can choose, well, it's not going landscape, it's not going on YouTube, it's actually going to go on social media, in which case a reel or portrait is probably best. Or you know what, it's going to sit on the school website, so I'm happy for it to be a square, because maybe I'll have like a video beside it. Let me see, theme, maybe I want to have, let's just scroll down through these, which type of brand suits my podcast that I have. I quite like that one. Quite chalkboardy one, doodles. Let's see, terminal. Let's see what that one's like. This one suits. This was quite like pixels would work quite well for the like a digital pulse one. So let's go with that. Or you can upload one. So maybe your students have gone into Adobe Express and they've already made their podcast cover art and they've got their own background that they want to use. Then this is a great opportunity just to upload a background that they've already created. Then you've got options to show speaker name. Super handy if you've got loads of guests and you had students coming in and they all had their own account. But if you had, like, let's say 3 students in a room at one laptop working on one podcast and they just are all sharing the same mic, then you maybe don't need a speaker name on at all. Just take it off. And that's where that becomes really helpful. The project title, this is if you hadn't named it and it just said untitled and the date, you would probably want to switch that off. But I'm quite happy for it to be on. And then the remove branding is automatically ticked on, because when you're using Adobe Express for Education, you have premium access to Adobe Podcast, which means you have that feature enabled already. But that's what it would look like if you didn't have Adobe Express for Education access to Adobe Podcast. So clicking it off there, I'm happy with this. Tells me how long my podcast is. It's about 1 minute and 7 seconds, and it'll take Adobe Podcast less than a minute to make this video. So I think that's quite good for like that instant gratification where I'm like, how long will it take to make this? I really want to know. That's all it'll take. So as it says, this may take a few minutes. Whilst you're waiting for that to download, let's go have a little look at some of the other export options. I'm pretty sure I can leave that alone. So go to export here. You can export as a transcript. So again, if you needed, let's say your students didn't come with a script, or they were having a guest speaker who wasn't scripted, but you know, we love evidence of work. We love evidence, and you know, we want something to stick into the books, but we can't stick a podcast in. Well, then you could put the transcript in, and maybe you could turn that audiogram into a QR code so that you can put the QR code in and people can listen then to the podcast as well. So I'm going to show you how you could do that type of experience. And then your other option, again, you can see this is included as a premium feature, but you get it in your Express for Education license, is original recordings. Now, where that's applicable is probably more when you have a guest or expert in your podcast, and perhaps they want to go and make specific content based on the words they said. You know, they don't want to go and take, you know, the whole podcast transcript and video and audio and make social media content out of it. But they're like, I had a really good section there on the Battle of Hastings. Could I have the transcript or my audio file on the Battle of Hastings? I'd like to go and, you know, turn it into a blog post or go and do something with it. That's where it's helpful to have this. But it's not an essential thing for every single time you do a podcast to download original recordings for every speaker. But it's nice to know that you can. It's, as I like to say, it's better looking at it than looking for it. So let's have a little look in my audiogram down here. That did kick me out of it. I was hoping it would still go in the background, but now I know. So let me take off the speaker name, create my audiogram, and then I'll just be patient for a little second. So now what I'm going to do, I've downloaded an MP3, and now I'm essentially downloading an MP4 or a .mov file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Express to make a QR code version of this. And to do that, I need to upload either the audio file, the MP3, or this audiogram into an Express file so that I can make a view-only link. So let's go through that process. I'll keep this in the background there, done. It's just downloading up there for me, which is great. So I'm going to head back over to Express. And one thing that I think is really fun, especially if you've got a short podcast, less than 2 minutes, is to turn your podcast into an animated character. Now, what I mean by this is clicking into the animated character tile. You can choose any of your characters here. And if you haven't explored this, it's like one of my favorite features in Express. But you could go and choose a character and a background. And you don't even have to choose, like this one quite looks like a podcast setup. But you don't have to choose a background at all. Maybe you have a background in Express that you want to use, in which case, totally fine. Just, keep it with no background at all. But let's say for the purposes of this, I do want a background in it. So let me pop that here, this here, and for the size of this, I'm going to go with a square as well. Let me go square, and I can kind of see a bit of the microphone there that she's talking to. In fact, maybe I will go full landscape so that I can see the microphone, because it looks like a podcast setup, even though it's a streamer one. And down here, you can see you can record your character's dialogue or browse, which means you can basically upload something, and you can upload an MP3 or MP4 files, other ones as well, but these are the ones that we're looking for. So I'm going to choose browse, and I'm going to find my digital footprints. MP3 or MP4 works. And that's going to animate my character like this. Now, what I have learned is the character will also animate during the music. So you can edit the character, you can like trim the start of the clip and things like that. But if you know that you're going to be using Animate Character for your podcast ads or your trailers or teasers, then I would recommend you put the music always as the background so that there's someone talking whilst music is happening, just to save you a bit of editing afterwards. Unless you are up for the editing challenge and just want to have fun with it, and that's your full creative process, then please go for it. Do the full end-to-end experience of it. I wouldn't dream of telling you otherwise. But I know when I have done this with a group of fantastic secondary school students, what we did was we recorded silence as an animate character. We just held silence, hit record, so that we had what we call B-roll footage. So we had just like backup footage essentially of the animate character that I could slot in. I could split clips and slot it in between the podcasted section. And that really is like advanced editing skills that's more suitable for older students. And again, it would be, what's the purpose of doing that? Those students were making podcasts and making video animations for primary school students in the local area. So they were like, oh yeah, we want to have like basically multiple means of engagement, and they had multiple means of expression. So it was some of those universal design for learning principles in between it, which is just fantastic. So good ideas to share, but it's not essential when you're just starting in podcast. But if you are looking to go that next step further and you're like, Nicole, I'm ready for this, shoot me a message and we'll see if we can do a session, or like I'll do a longer demo or make a resource for how to do that type of podcast, turning it into a vodcast, into a video version. So whilst Animate Character is doing its thing, it's essentially transcribing speech to text to create a version of the podcast frame by frame with some motion. And I can have a little preview of it here, or I can just go straight in and open in the editor. I know I'm just going to open in the editor because I want to do something else with my video, because I want to be able to turn it into a view-only link that I can link to a QR code, so that I could pop it up in the corridors, or put it out on the, if I was doing one with the local business, put it up on their windows and things like that. So give it a little second to render and come into your file. And you can see it's buffering in the top corner. And what I'm going to do now is, remember I made that audiogram? Well, I think the audiogram is fantastic because it essentially gave me captions, but you can also do captions in Express down here with your in the video tool. So I could caption this animate character and it would just come up with those closed captions. But I quite like the audiogram. There's a nice little vibe to it. So maybe I'm going to bring that video in as well. So I'm just going to go to upload over on the left-hand side. Go and find my MP4 right there. It's asking me, do I want to add it as a layer or as a sequence? I'm happy to add it as a layer. And then now I'm just going to resize it to fit onto my, and maybe just cover this little desk space here. Like so. Now, you can probably guess what's going to happen. So I've got an animate character with my podcast MP3 audio, and I've got my audiogram MP4 with my podcast audio. So I've got two audio files playing at the same time. This one's still buffering in, so I have time to explain this whilst it's working. So what I could do whilst that's, because I've got two going at the same time, is I could choose either of them, it doesn't matter which one, and mute it, just take the sound off it, but still keep the video aspect of it. So I'm currently clicked on my audiogram here, and you can tell because it's got the little nodes all around the square of it. And over on the left-hand side, I have this edit menu. And the edit menu has a couple of options for me. I can enhance the speech here as well if I forgot to do that in the podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to enhance speech. I could do that now if I wanted to. Doesn't matter about enhancing the speech on this one because I'm going to mute this file. And I will only have the audio then that's coming from the Animate Characters one. So let's have, it's still taking a long time to buffer, which probably explains streaming and podcasting or using the Express at the same time, two heavy tools going at once. Well, I might give it a little second and then I'll refresh. But what I would be doing is going to the share button in the top right whenever this does load. View only link. Let me just zoom in there. Let me see it. The share button, view only link. Choose if you want to display the author. Children love having their names on things, and then create link. And that link will be what we attach to the QR code generator in Express. And whenever you make a change to this file, so if I go and add another scene or another page, or I do go and put extra captions on it, or I want to make some splits like I was talking about earlier, all I have to do then is update and republish the link so that those changes are reflected. And I don't need to change the QR code, that will happen automatically, but you do just need to republish this link that it's going to create whenever it's done. There we are. Copy that link. And I'm just going to go into another tab here to show you this bit. So I would scroll down to the very bottom. Here it is, generate a QR code. Click. Paste that QR code in, and you can see you can choose what type of file you want. Now, if you know you're going to be printing this off and things like that, then maybe you're going to want to turn it into a poster. So that's where this is handy. It makes some templates for you. I normally like it as a starting point, and then I change everything about it anyway. And maybe that's something creative that if you're giving students group work, someone's in charge of like the graphic design behind the podcast, somebody's in charge of the video advert for the podcast. You know, you think of some of the biggest podcasts in the world. It's not just that one person on a microphone. There's an entire team, an entire marketing engine behind them working together to collaborate and make this thing work. So choose a template and then remix it and change everything about it. So less is more in this one. This is not me being less is more. This is me doing extra things. Here we go. I've got my QR code, and I've got this little option. The QR code actually looks cropped, to be honest. There we are. Just need to stretch that out a little bit. There we are. You could give that a scan right now and see what I mean. See what it looks like as the view only link. And maybe I want to change this up. You know, I'm just like, this is the digital pulse. And I'm going to make this a whole experience. Go and make like my own. Maybe I have a logo. Maybe I need to go into the Express logo maker. Here on the homepage, right beside it, make a logo. Go and make a logo for my podcast. Super quick, you know, the digital pulse. Enter a slogan. Tech tips for teens. And then click next. And choose an icon. So I'm going to say digital. Ooh, like this one. Oh, I quite like that one as well. Let's go here. What type of inspiration do I like? I mean, I want something quite bold, quite like the color. Some options here, let's see. Or just clear the colors and have options. Like this one. So I'm going to click here and it's going to make me a logo based on what I gave it, the slogan. Tech tips for teens. The digital pulse, I mean, I would definitely go in and edit that. So I could click edit more because I find it hard to read that writing. Or if I wanted to do some changing around, I could change colors and go in and make some more edits. So let's say I wanted, you know, to search for sunset palette. Let's say sunset. Go and click some in. Let's see if digital has a palette in here. That one works. And you're always kind of thinking about the accessibility of your, oh, that one's much better. I can read that a little bit better, but I still don't have good spacing here. So what I'm going to do is at the end of pulse, actually, I'm going to put a lot of spaces to move this almost into an arc. In fact, I don't need to do that because I can just go to text layouts and turn it into an arc. Silly me, silly me. There we are. That's easier to read. And then what I might do is like put tech tips for teens in here, but just drag that up to the top. You know, so making a couple of changes. Oh, deleted off that. Digital pulse. Let's say I'm happy with this. Rename it the digital pulse logo. I could go and add that to a brand kit as well. If you had like a college, school or university brand that you wanted to apply, I could pop it in there. And then now when I'm over in Express over here, I've got like, you know, maybe something that I can go and, okay, well, I want to go and change the background color. And whilst this isn't the demo of how to make the poster, you know, it gives you an example of how you could get students to team up, you know, because not every student wants to be the voice of the podcast, but some of them might be very happy to contribute to the school podcast or the college podcast in another way. And then I probably just need to put in something like the name of the episode or something like that. And I could do that down here. I'm going to go back now and see how the rendering has gone in the background. So what was this first one was digital footprints. Digital footprints. And maybe would have like a call to action like listen now or something like that. So let's hop back over. Here it is. Let me have a little play. Might give it a refresh. Yeah, let me refresh this. And then drop that down. There we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a bite-sized episode of the Digital Pulse. I'm Nicole O'Connor, your digital leader for today's session. We all know the basics of online safety. We've been hearing them since primary school. But as we start looking at universities, jobs, moving out, getting our own place, the stakes are getting quite a lot higher. So today I'm going to give you 3 quick wins to keep your digital life secure. First, So you saw there, like my little animate character made a whoop whenever there was a little chime. And I mean, that's not bad. I don't mind that. That's almost the way I would behave when I hear like little soundtracks. I bop along to it as well. So there's the enhancement from going from just the audio experience of the podcast and then blending it together with Animate Characters and the audiogram, putting it all into like one big mega sandwich of content for this podcast. And then being able to go and have like a full team experience. Somebody's making the logos, somebody's making even like the social media caption or the email newsletter copy, the words that are needed in that to tell people about the latest episode. Maybe it's going to go on, it's going to be hyperlinked on the weekly PDF newsletter that the principal or the faculty put out, and you just want to hyperlink it in there. That takes a team. You still need to have people working together to contribute to this. So being able to pull that all together then into some flyers, your students could definitely make one that looks a lot better than this. That was just an example of how to take the QR codes so that you have, sometimes we need that all important evidence to show what we've been getting up to. So sharing this then, S1, E1, the digital pulse. What I could do now if I wanted my teacher to see this is I could share it into our Adobe Classroom. If I have that in my region, a student would see in the top left corner or in the top right corner the words turn in, and they could turn it in. So all you would need to have then as a teacher is an assignment open for them to turn in some work to you. So in your classroom over here, if I just open up a demo class, create an assignment, and this is going to be podcast episodes. And I would almost just have this, especially if your podcast is going to be like year long and it's not just a flash in the pan, I would just have this permanently open. So I wouldn't put in a due date. This is just always going to be open. And turn in your podcast episodes with a QR code poster here. And gallery if we want students to see each other's work, or no gallery if we don't want the students to see each other's work, we just want to get the work as the teacher. We do have to assign a project type, and for this we know they're going to be turning in a poster. So just click the poster tile or the animate character tile if that's what they're going to send in, then click next and assign. And that's it. And I would just leave that one open all year round if that's how I want to get their podcast, because maybe I am going to go put it on the school website or on the college Spotify or Apple podcast channel, but the students don't have direct access to it. Then that's how I would manage getting the work in. But let's say you don't have classrooms just yet, and then you would just get students in the top right to click here and share it with you and type in your Adobe email so that you could get a copy of either the Animate Characters one or the poster with the QR code, however you prefer to receive the work. Okay, that leads me back to podcast, into here, and to let you know that in your projects that you've had before, so for example, this one I've just done, I can click in the three wee dots, everything good's behind the three wee dots, and duplicate this podcast. That's why it's really handy if you had the placeholders, because maybe I know I'm going to repeat that formula, that format over and over again. So I just have to click here and duplicate. And then when I do that, let me show you. I'm going to go in. And this one is not going to be episode 1. It's going to be episode 2. And I would just delete out these sections then. Take them out. I'm happy with where the sound effects are, but I don't need any of the transcription piece. So then I've got my clean template, and that's made it so much quicker whenever I come back to do episode 2. And then if I've already got my poster made, and I've already got my style chosen for my audiograms and for my animate characters, if I'm going down that route, then I already have a lot of frameworks in place after I've done all the planning needed for episode 1. So don't skip out on the planning. The planning section is probably most important. And you could turn this into a template. So in this share option, I could create this as a template then, so I don't need to do that duplicate section all the time. And I could give that to students in Adobe Classroom. So I could go over here, back into my classroom, back into my podcast episodes. Let me edit this assignment. And I say template here. I could paste it in there, or I could go over, I can't put it in over there, but I can just go and update that. And then my students get this view. So let me go to the student view. They get this view when they open up Adobe Classrooms. Template here, they could click that and away they go. All right. So loads of ways for you to get started with podcasting in your classroom. Podcasting is an art form. It absolutely is. It's a great device for storytelling, for digital storytelling, of course, and for communicating ideas with other people. So find a really great purpose for it, and then get students collaborating together to create some audio magic for you all. For wrapping up today's session, if you would like to get a badge for taking part in today's course, then you just go to adobe.ly/ACE badge, and you can just download your Adobe Creative Educator badge. And if you're curious about things like this and you would like to get access to more resources and more tips and tricks about how to use Adobe for Education software in your school or college, then please come and join ACE Leader. So adobe.ly/Leader Europe. That's also where you can express your interest in our student ambassador program, so that you'll hear all the latest resources that are available with it. And I hope to see you on a future session. And until then, peace, love, and hugs. Take care now. Bye-bye.